There is a lot to unpack here, so let's open up this suitcase. Why don't we? Basically, old boy tagged me in this video. He's getting a lot of pressure and a lot of carbon in his cooling system from somewhere. He's got one shop that built the motor telling him one thing. He's got another shop that's taking it apart to try and fix it, telling him another thing. Who's right? Who's wrong? What do you do? This is my 2 cents on this whole ordeal. It is up to you whether you throw it in the garbage or put it in your piggy bank, but either way, it's just 2 cents. Here's where my head's going with this. I know that you said that the head and the head gasket are fine, and I believe you, and I believe the guy that took it apart. I'm sure it is fine. I would still personally double check both of them again. I'd have that head sent off to be Magnaflux, check for cracks, check the cups. I would double check the head gasket again, and then if really all of that really seriously is fine, I would probably be going right for the liners then and making sure that none of the liners are cracked, because liners are a great place for cooling systems to build pressure now and build a lot of carbon in them fast. The only other thing I can think of is if the liners really were that low. We'll get to the low liner thing here in a second. If the liners really were so low that the head gasket didn't get crushed properly and it's just fucking straight passing carbon through the head gasket into the cooling system, I still would think you'd have to see something on the head gasket then. One of those couple things has to be fucked up some way or another. It just has to be. If I'm missing something, somebody say something about it. But that's just where my head's going. That's like my fucking first thought, is one of those couple things has to be wrong. Now, as far as the low liner thing and shimming, I'm going to clear the air on one thing. There is a gasket that goes between the deck and the spacer plate on these motors, and there's some people out there that call them a shim. I don't call it a shim. I call it a spacer plate gasket. It's black, and it's fucking steel. It's steel. It's a steel gasket. If the original shop that built this motor is saying that motherfucker does not have to be in there because the deck just got freshly cut and everything, they're fucking wrong. That's bullshit, and they're fucking stupid. That thing has to be in there. That fucking gasket absolutely has to be in there. Next order of business. If you're not talking about that, I just want to make sure that wasn't getting lost in translation. If you're not talking about that gasket and what you're talking about is liner shims, it can go either way. You could need them or you could not need them, and it just depends on the mechanic and how you guys want to do it. I always aim for getting liners on cat motors right at the top of spec. I mean, regardless of what I'm building, I try and aim for it to be right at the top of spec. Cat motors, you have some fucking grace in how you do this, and there's 2 different ways to get your liner protrusion to come out correctly. Some people might call my methods hokey pokey. I say that they're not. Option 1 is traditionally like you would do on a Cummins or a Detroit, where you take a cutter and you cut into the deck of the block so you can put shims in and then put the liner down to get all of your liners to come out evenly. Protrusion is great as long as you're putting that gasket down and then the spacer plate down and then torquing down the spacer plate and checking your liner protrusion. If anybody in this whole scenario is not doing that, everybody's already doing everything wrong. And I hate telling anybody they're doing something wrong, but that's just wrong. Which, that could also be another reason that your shop is saying that the liner protrusion's low, because if they just put the fucking spacer plate and gasket down and don't torque it down, and they just have that fucking sled floating up there, just make sure it's torqued, because that could be another way that they're saying that the liner protrusion is low, and there's a different problem. Now, if you torque this spacer plate down and check your liner protrusion, and the liner protrusion's low, but it's even all the way across, like it's like fucking dead even, and I always use like a half a thou tolerance across it. Like if I have like 1 thou, 1 thou, 1 thou, 1.5, 1 thou, 1 thou, 1 thou, 1.5, whatever the fuck, like that's fine to me. And what I do at that point is I take the spacer plate off and I send it off to a machine shop and I have them deck it for the difference of what I want it to come out to be. That's what some people call hokey pokey. And the only reason I say it's not hokey pokey is because you can go to CAT and you can get different thicknesses of spacer plates, which is coming into my next point. If the original shop that built this motor is saying that you don't need to cut for shims because the block was freshly decked, and they're not wrong is the problem here. If that cat block is freshly decked and there's fresh liners sitting on top of that deck and they use a fresh everything's fresh, it shouldn't need cut, but that's not how the world works. It's not all fucking butterflies and rainbows, and cat motors don't always have the perfect liner protrusion. Different thicknesses of spacer plates can make your liner protrusion come out differently on these things, and if they have one thickness and they should have used the other thickness, you'll have low liner protrusion. Or they could have one thickness and you could use another thickness and you could have high liner protrusion, and then you're still cutting for shims. And it's just, or you, I get whatever the fuck. Regardless, it would be bare minimum. I've done, I think, all the explaining that's worth saying anything. Bare minimum, what I would be doing is I would be double checking the fuck out of that head and that head gasket, and then I would be looking at the liners and making sure that the liners are not cracked. If all of that truly is jiving, I have not a goddamn fucking clue where the hell all that carbon would be coming from, unless somebody else has another idea. One of those things has to be screwed up some way. But as far as the liners go and getting the liners set correctly, I would be decking that spacer plate, getting a different spacer plate, or I would be cutting that block for shims. I really don't care if it's freshly decked. This is also all coming from the same asshole that will sit at the fucking workbench with my fresh fucking liners that are brand new, and there should be nothing wrong with them, and I'm looking for shit. You know, I got a fucking micrometer out and I'm measuring the flange in 4 different spots and writing it down. You know, I'm also the same asshole that gets a fresh pack of fucking liner shims, and I take a fucking micrometer to every single one of those fucking liner shims and I mark it the exact fucking thickness. I don't care if it's a 30 thou shim. If I find out that that motherfucker's 32 thousandths of an inch, I'm writing it down, because they're fucking going in this goddamn motor one way or another, and I'm cutting for it. Keep me up to date. Like I said, I'm kind of a fucking idiot, but I really know what I'm talking about.